Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. Welcome to Face to Face. Our next interview today is with Eric Kim. He's a Korean Canadian. I'm sure he'll have an opinion about that in a few minutes to tell us a little bit more. He's here today to tell us a little bit more about what he does, who he is, and what he's up to. I'm currently looking at the complete plays of William Shakespeare for the listeners who can't see over my shoulder. The book is all of about 85 pages, and each play gets 2 pages. The complete plays of William Shakespeare as adapted by Eric Kim. Eric, before we even get into it, there seems to me to be an awful lot of arrogance behind this idea that you can take on the complete works of William Shakespeare in 84 pages and do it in a comic book setting. Tell me a little bit more about that. It's awesome, by the way. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you. I think that at the time I was coming at it from a place of complete frustration with my own writing. And so I soothed my ego by thinking to myself, well, Shakespeare must have had bad days. Maybe Shakespeare was a struggling writer, and this is why he turned out so much work. And it also came about because I had been joking around with friends of mine about distilling Hamlet into 2 panels. And this was, I can't remember how it came about, but we were talking about Hamlet being distilled down into 2 panels, and I had done it.
Hamlet, the 4.5-hour movie that Kenneth Branagh did a few years ago.
Yeah. Right, and so I just shrank it down, and it was like, oh, everyone's alive. It started off with Hamlet talking with his father, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do, and then his father comes out and says, should rectify this. And at the end, I just come up with everyone being dead, and and everyone going like, oh, what happened?
Pretty much everyone does die in Hamlet.
Yeah, exactly, except for, I think it's Horatio. No, I can't remember. No.
Well, you're the one who did the complete works on William Shakespeare, or the complete plays.
So, it's been a while. Well, this was terrible.
Well, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it, as I know our listeners will as well.
Thanks for having me.
Eric's an artist. He's a writer. He's I hope this doesn't sound negative at all, but I think a generalist, actually, sort of in some ways when it comes to media and film and animation. And we've just had a wonderful breakfast together, kind of getting to know each other a little bit as we prepared to do our interview together. And young guy living in the annex here in the heart of Toronto. And we are on this warm August morning going to chat a little bit more about why you do what you do. So 35 years ago, no one knows who I am, or how old I am, but 47, I probably walked into the Dragon Lady comic book shop on Queen Street. Not far at that time from the Silver Snail, and then Bacca.
Yep, Bacca was on there. Bacca was fantastic.
So
it's been a while. Fantastic, rather.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I've walked that street. Huge memories for me of saving up my money, and Spider-Man and certain issues, and then Wolverine, and the list goes on.
Oh yeah.
How has the industry changed since then? I mean, we chatted briefly about the Dragon Lady no longer being there, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah.
From a whole lot of perspectives. But you. Oh, by the way, you seem to be living in the hub right now.
Oh yeah.
Comic Book Central in Toronto.
Oh my God, yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about the industry and what's going on with it.
Well, I mean, just locally. I mean, obviously, the shift of comics, I think, the focus of comics has shifted away from Queen Street over to the Annex. I think because the Beguiling, and of course their efforts developing TCAF and curating wonderful shows. Also over at Yonge and Dundas, where the Silver Snail is now, they've been doing really well over there. And everyone's just sort of moved away from Queen Street. The Dragon Lady has transformed itself into the comic book lounge. And in terms of publishing, it's moved away from the specialty shops, which used to have everything. When they still do. and their knowledge base is fantastic. Their sales staff, all incredibly well learned, very comprehensive for all three stores. But I think that also it's all a lot of the focus has shifted to being online. A lot of artists are now starting to get their work seen online. Their exposure to work is online. A greater diversity of work exists online. I mean, there's not enough that could be said about being, on the internet and being seen that way. It used to be that the specialty stores like the Dragon Lady and Silver Snail and the Beguiling would carry your independent comics and zines.
Right.
And that would be how people would break in.
Right, buy 50 copies or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, and that's enough encouragement too. I mean, I think that in a way you have, you're more beholden to your readers when it's in print. The idea of print legitimizing the work, I think it's still pretty fair today. Whereas with webcomics and online social media, I think everyone's very focused on numbers.
Like how many Twitter followers you have, how many
exactly.
downloads you've had, that kind of thing.
Yeah, how many friends you've attained and how many hits you've gotten.
Yeah, 14,269 of my closest friends.
Yeah, like this post.
Yes,
and it's it's very. It can be very, very. I don't know. Unless you understand how to perceive the stats properly, it can be really misleading as to what it is that you're actually seeing. So there's a lot of trying to figure out what it is that you're actually doing, what you're actually seeing, and it's a very different.
Is it more important for you today to publish a book online, would you say, or are you still kind of old school enough to say? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at a copy of the complete plays of Shakespeare by Eric and a series of books, Love is a Foreign Language, which I'm hoping we're going to get to chat about a little more. I mean, these are real books. These are, when I say real books, they're tangible. They're printed on newsprint, etc. Does that excite you more than, say, publishing something in a PDF?
Yeah, it does actually, because when I design a book, I think a lot about the spreads, how it will read, in a book form. And so when I'm thinking about an online webcomic, everything's designed to be a single page. So just from a pure design interactive experience, there's so many things to consider about how the reader will be taking in the work, and it changes
context, framing, etc. So when you say a webcomic is one page, does that mean the whole story has to sort of happen there in front of you on that one page?
Some people go for the strip format where it's all just a single contained story, like one comic strip, almost like a newspaper strip.
Yeah, like the jokes you would see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 4 panels and there's the gag.
Right.
Other people go for a continuous story, but they still have to design their pages so that you read one page, and then the next page, and then the next page, and you click on it to go through. With some of the things that I do in the comic book, I use the spread, both pages being open at the same time, in order to get the message across of this is so vast, or this is so large, or this moment is really exciting. And a lot of that book design is, in a way, lost, I think, with the webcomics. But with the webcomics, what they do is they just format the pages differently. There are a lot of webcomics where the length of the strip, I'm using a visual demonstration, but sometimes the strips are really long, and that's how they attain their sense of greatness or importance.
Right. Yeah. Do you think the story changes? Because I mean, I know as a kid, and I guess maybe I'm maybe more of an old fart than you are, in the sense that the smell of the comic, the newsprint, the advertisements for the Charles Atlas book, and now I'm really dating myself, you know, at the back, or the magic tricks.
I'm there too,
all those things were just, I don't know, there was something about it for me as a kid. Now, maybe it's just different today. It's just a different experience. I don't want to say one's better than the other, but there seems to me to be something that's potentially lost
I think so.
in translation there,
There's a much more fuller reading experience, I think, when you have the smell of the pages, just the yellowing of them, the texture, the advertisements, everything. You're right. I mean, it really puts you in a particular place in time, and says to the reader, this is where you are. When I read old comics from the 70s and 80s or the 60s, and I see the hypnotic glasses, or right. It's just amazing.
The X-ray glasses, hysterical.
See through your hand.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, those are fantastic because you sort of get the sense of this is what things were like back then. This is things were happening on Lafayette Boulevard over in over in New York, this is where I'd be sending all my stuff. And some of those things are just they're so goofy.
I've done magic for 38 years, practicing magician. That's magician, not musician. And a common mistake in pronunciation. And my first magic tricks were a little finger chopper and this thing called Mystic Smoke.
Oh, yeah.
That came, and a little coin slide that you vanished a nickel in, which I'm sure you can find in any joke shop today. Or even Toys R Us, on the checkout line. But that's where I got my first 3 magic tricks. I was about 8 years old. I remember the deal of sending away for that. Now, I guess kids do that today. We do that today through Amazon, and your books are available online, and you can order downloads of your PDFs, I would imagine. And
it's a bit of a different world nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's another fun thing about just waiting, the anticipation of having, all of a sudden,
waiting for the next issue.
Oh, waiting for the next issue, or waiting for the thing to come in the mail, or and all the rest. And now it's everything's pretty much just overnight delivery. Get into your hands, instantaneous gratification. But in a way, it's really frustrating trying to keep up with these.
How has it changed the way you practice your craft? How has it changed the way that you write and draw and publish? I mean, obviously, there's some mechanical things from a get an online perspective. You got to upload it, etc. But has it? It must. Has it shifted the way you tell stories?
I have this bad habit of basically starting large endeavors and then backing off immediately. So I learn in this sort of backwards kind of fashion of doing it and then suddenly recanting and then analyzing what I did wrong and then going back and doing it again. So I started off making a webcomic.
Which I bet in some way, Eric, makes you really good at what you do. Right? There's a certain...
More seasoned.
I was kidding about the arrogance and taking on Shakespeare, but there's a certain pride and...
I think you do.
In being an artist, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also this sense of stepping back and going, okay, maybe it's not quite right yet.
Yeah.
So there's this tension between, it seems to me, between the two things.
What's funny about comics is that they sort of live at this intersection of art and commerce. And so what you end up doing, especially for Shakespeare, is that I thought it was a fun concept and I did it. And I was encouraged all along because I lost heart about halfway through. But I still finished the project, and artistically, I think it says a lot about where I was at the time, a lot about how I look at Shakespeare, and unfortunately, it's not the same as how I see it today. I have a lot more respect for Shakespeare.
I can imagine. I don't know anyone I think that's read the complete works, but
I've known a couple. They find me after hearing about this book, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I've read the complete works of Shakespeare, and you got it dead on, and that's really great." But when I look at I get disappointed by the business side of it because I think it could have gone further. And so from every experience, I end up learning a lot more. And I'm stubborn enough where the only way I'll learn is just through experience, by doing it and then learn from it and then, have to keep doing it in order to, do it again. So for how online, I think, shapes how I work, when I made an online comic a while back, and I got such stinging comments that I didn't want to go back to doing it at all because I was so upset. And so it actually taught me a couple of things, which is, one, I can't listen at all to what anybody says to me online. I'll just have to do what I'm doing and just, hope that I can match up to what I wanted to see.
Right.
The second thing is I have to make sure that I'm the audience that I'm writing for, not people that I want to make happy. I can't.
Right.
Yeah. I absolutely can't live to please others. It drives me mental. And 3 is that basically I can't live for the instantaneous gratification in a way. The best part about the internet is probably also the worst part in a way, in that there's this instantaneous gratification you get when you post a new page or a new blog post or, photos from Instagram or whatever. But you can't live for those moments because just as quickly they go away. And people forget what you've done, and they attach no significance to it. So the only thing that I think lasts with people is when you do create a project that has lasting significance. You make a book, or you make a story, or you make a strong stance. Those things last with people, and that's the only thing you can really hope for. That you just follow through on a project that you really care about, and I think that helps. Lower the volume on commenters that, troll pages and are like, oh, This
well,
sucks.
I mean, yeah, exactly. It's almost become a trite comment to say people are angry on the internet or people are unfriendly on blogs. And I'm astounded by some of the stuff that I have read on articles that have been written or people who have taken positions on certain issues and just the poison that comes out through the fingertips. It's just, it's troubling.
It's the anonymity, I think, of the internet.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussions about it.
Yeah, I'm sure there has. Yeah. So tell me a bit about this. So lasting significance.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Eric, you're a comic artist. What are you talking about? No, but I mean that seriously, because you and I had just had a conversation about this idea. What is art? And it's got to be, I think, a conversation, an internal conversation that every artist is having. What is of lasting significance that I'm doing? How is it inspiring people to do other things? How is it creating any kind of social change and so on, which is sort of the world that I live in. Love to hear what you have to say with that. Again, I'm joking with you about the whole. I actually do believe, and this is where I want to come back to, in a few minutes, or come back to. But I want to talk about love as a foreign language.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so tell me more about art, your own struggles with it, and how you think you're making a difference.
I used to have this, like we were talking about before. I used to have this real problem with art because I thought it had zero significance to it, and I would just get really depressed working at home on my own and try and figure out what it was that I was doing and how it was important in any way, shape, or form. And then I realized that it just sort of embodies a lot of ideals that, if we don't have today, are worth striving for tomorrow. And if they are realized today, then to sort of say this is where we were, and this is who we are. And I think those are good things to record. Those are good things to sort of leave as historical landmarks, I guess, for the next generation. Love as a Foreign Language is a story, and this is Jay's story, of course, like Jay Torres. Love as a Foreign Language is a story about a guy that goes overseas to Korea, and he finds that he hates it there. And then he falls in love with the secretary there, Hannah. And the story of them coming together, of them overcoming these cultural obstacles in order to, finally sort of meet each other. And it's mostly just Joel actually overcoming his own problems with the culture, and finally being able to talk with Hannah, the secretary. That story, it's a good story, and it's fun, and it's sweet. And these are things that are good to discuss at the very least.
I gotta interject. There's a beautiful. Maybe we'll end up chatting about it more now than later. But on a review of Love as a Foreign Language by Jonathan Ellis, opening line is, quote, "Love as a Foreign Language is an ongoing graphic novel series that presents the ideal that the heart needs no translator." It's so amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. A comedic romance that also comments on a clash of two cultures, close quote. I mean, right out of the gate, it appeals to me as an international development guy. It appeals to me as a philosopher, etc. But this idea of the heart needing no translator, I mean, I immediately thought of Pascal, and, the heart has its reasons that the head cannot know. So that there's this whole other language. It's beautiful. It's amazing. So to me, I haven't even read them yet, and I'm already inspired, on some level. So you talked earlier about art being inspirational offline. Tell me more about that.
I think in Love as a Foreign Language specifically, because it deals with romance and it deals with love. The ideal here is that you shouldn't give up on love. You should go for it. And the heart wants what it wants, and and that with some feelings you can just communicate these ideas without having to get too much into the details, like the language or the cultural discrepancies.
What I love about it is philosophically, it speaks to the notion that you don't need to be explicit about knowledge. Knowledge is not necessarily quantifiable. Knowledge is not necessarily logic. It's not about numbers. It's not about lines and boxes and graphs. And it's about something intangible, like love.
Yeah.
And you can there are other kinds of knowing that are valid. And as an artist, you must reflect on that.
I think absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that are just, when it comes to art, I think there are a lot of truths that are self-evident. They're intuitive. You know them to be true, even if you can't explain them. And God knows I have the worst time trying to articulate my thoughts, especially because I'm an artist. I don't know. Most of the writers I've met are brilliant at articulating their abstract thoughts, but I'm so miserable at it. Um, at, I think that when you come across these things, when you come across these truths, and you're able to at least get them out to a larger audience, the feeling there is really nice. Everyone knows the truth behind it. Everyone knows.
There's something that resonates.
Absolutely.
How do you get things out to a larger audience now? So tell me, you're largely not all self-published, but you're speaking more, it seems, to self-publishing, and you certainly seem to be a proponent of it. What can the new comic book artist, writer learn from what you've already done?
I think that the comic artist today has to be more of a generalist than he ever has been, or she ever has been. And that means you have to be proficient at, the business end. You have to be proficient at the art. You have to be proficient at the writing. You have to have your intent and your ideas clear. You have to understand how to market and everything. The internet makes things the best time ever for artists to be able to do everything themselves and to maintain their creative vision and all the rest. And so this is a pretty amazing time. It's actually kind of a weird coincidence, because I finished up working on a book for Oni Press called Billy Smoke. That'll hopefully we'll see publication, sometime soon in 2013, tail end of 2013 or 2014. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I've still focused very much on trying to be able to do everything all in-house on my own, or, as an all-in-one. So I guess, I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, no, you are. Well, what's interesting is you're actually answering it as you go. But this whole idea of self-publishing and what are some of the things that you've learned? But what are some of the things that you could talk about for younger comic book artists, younger writers who are trying to self-publish? I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of it myself with a collection of essays, and there's all these sort of what I would call vanity publishing houses popping up that will, for X amount of dollars, publish your book, and they're making money off you because you want to get your book out there. Yeah. And so, I mean, the whole industry has changed.
It has changed.
It continues to change daily, it seems. So, how do you get your book out in the street?
What I find really funny is that publishers want people that are very savvy with their social media. They want authors that have a lot of Twitter followers or have Facebook pages that have lots of fans and all the rest. People that have established themselves already, so that they're not strangers to the reading audience.
Right.
So there's that aspect. So when it comes to people making their own books, they just simply have to do it and then just hope that their message finds a larger audience. And it's funny too, because it used to be that I used to think that an author or a creator only had to make one book and then just really sell the hell out of it. So you were looking at a period of time that, basically you had to basically do this for about 2 years. But now, as I go on, I'm starting to realize that you actually have to have a series of 5 books.
Wow.
Where you have to think in terms of the long term. You have
to body of work.
Yeah, an established body of work.
You got to be established.
Absolutely, and just established to your fans. You don't really have to establish yourselves to anybody else. People will find you, and that's the best part about readers, is that they will communicate to other people. And endorse the work and be like, this is what I like. You should really read this person. And Cory Doctorow I think he had at least 2 books that were freely available to people, that people just passed around, and he developed his readership that way. And then publishers were like, well, we'd love to publish your work, and Cory Doctorow maintained that he still wanted the books to be freely available, and the publishers were fine with that. And so they still publish the work regardless. So it doesn't really matter if the work is out there. I think if people love it, they will, they'll come and buy it. Like 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
Oh, that book. But I think when it comes to artists and writers and anybody looking to publish, they should just do it and then slowly develop the marketing, and once they do it, they have to talk about it and get it out there in front of people.
Right.
And develop more criticism, more critical reviews, more responses.
So why comics? I mean, I know they resonated with me. I think I mentioned to you earlier that the storylines were more important to me than the art was more important to me than the collecting. And although there was this really interesting relationship of having the magazine, the comic, well, I guess they're called magazines maybe today, but they were comic books, and the smell and all that, going through them before I'd go to bed. And, oh yeah, that's right, I need issue 63 of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I can't afford it yet because some special artist did the cover, damn it. And it pushed the price up to $15 instead of that $5 that I could probably afford. I remember a guy that I knew had 3 papers. He had the Star, the Globe, and the Toronto Sun, all the 3 biggies. And I had the Etobicoke Guardian. And I was making, no kidding, $12 to $18 a month.
Yeah.
And he was probably making $20 or $30 a week. But he was also getting up at 5 o'clock every single morning to deliver these. You should have seen his comic book collection.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember what it was for me, but I didn't turn into, I'm probably a crummy artist. What was it that pulled you in?
When I was a kid, this sounds ridiculous. When I was a kid, my parents had a variety store. And so what they would do to encourage me to read was they would let me choose a comic book from the weekly comics that would come in. And I was always, every Tuesday, I would pick up the comics from the newsstand. And so I had a collection of comics that was like ridiculous. It spanned like, I think, my entire basement, my basement walls. And they were filled with comics from DC and Marvel and Archie and everything. And now that collection has sort of, been strewn to the winds over time. But what started me into becoming a fan of comics. And then from there...
Hang on. Are you a DC or a Marvel guy?
I'm a Marvel guy.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know.
Me too.
I don't even know what it is, but...
I know. There's very few DC properties that are worthwhile, it seems to me. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
My brief comment is that I really love DC comics from the 20s and 30s and earlier on. I really love Marvel comics from the 80s and on. So that's my specific time period.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was drawn to comics from an early age, and it was just going to be part of who I was. And then what I really found was that over time, my reading habits changed, as people's do. So you go from comics and you start reading books and you start reading.
Yep. Sure.
When it came to me being a teenager, I started resonating with comics again because the comics that were coming out at the time were like Tank Girl and The Crow and a bunch of other books that were really counterculture, that were outspoken. Right. And I think it was that outspokenness that I was attracted to. I was attracted to the idea of rebellion and being able to have some sort of revolution. So insurgent tendencies, I guess, when you're a teen. And then as I grew older, the work became more mature, and then I started getting into books by Chris Ware and the Brothers Hernandez. Got into the Brothers Hernandez, I guess, when I was 24. And just enjoying the idea and the concept of comics being able to tell more mature and more thoughtful stories.
So was there something about it that as you grew older that became a little more subversive? Do you think?
I think comics are just by nature subversive because
kind of almost rock and roll in a way.
Yeah, they really are. They're the rock and roll, I guess, of literature. And it makes sense to me because they're cheap, disposable pieces of literature.
Yeah.
And they're not meant to stick around, so you can pretty much say whatever you want. You can be shouting into the wind, But that's kind of the brilliance of comics too, because you have this sort of freedom to do what you want, and the expectations are so low, when you say something brilliant, I guess people really stand up and notice.
Do you remember Skateboarding magazine?
Yeah.
Yeah, Thrasher.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thrasher. I skateboarded. I was nuts.
Oh yeah.
I've got 3 or 4 broken bones and several concussions to prove it. Started when I was about 14, and then probably went through about a 5-year period. And it was big. Then it went away for a couple of years completely. Yeah. All the parks in Toronto closed. Oh, yeah. And then it came back. And Thrasher was kind of like, wow, huge. I wonder if this magazine's going to make it, because it was this newsprint thing. And anyway, watching that shift as it came back in was really interesting, because it was kind of like a comic book.
Yeah.
Or at least it had, would you say it had manga-like qualities, sort of?
Yeah, I think that this idea of manga-like qualities compared to Thrasher magazine, or
old comic books, for instance. Like the 80s comics.
Yeah, I think that you can probably draw parallels between skater culture from the 80s and comics from comes from then. And then also just sort of see the rise of them, you know? And it's funny too, because video games had the same sort of like renaissance. And basically just like, I think people just, the people that grow up with like, with skateboarder magazines, with video games, with comics, I mean, you know, they're in like their 30s and what now, and they've become basically the stewards of society, I guess, you know? And so they bring along what they love. And I think that's really good that they can reintroduce that to new generations, you know, and sort of like pass this down as like, this is part of your heritage. This is your, you know, this is your cultural legacy here, you know, skateboard magazines and Pac-Man, you know, that's not a terrible thing. I think it's a lot of fun.
How old was the guy who invented Pac-Man? He was 16, wasn't he, or something? He was very young.
Yeah, I think so.
Crazy. I remember I read an article recently about Pac-Man and the money involved and how many times the game has supposedly been played. I mean, it's insane. All right, so can you settle something for me?
Sure.
Are the Matrix and Hunger Games just cheap South Korean ripoff or Canadian American ripoffs from South Korean writers? Or Korean writers or Asian writers?
I can't speak to it. I mean,
I've heard this for so long, right?
With the Matrix, I don't know.
So listen, I'm walking my son to school, and this film guy, we often will walk back after our kids are on the bus, and he works at a local theater out in Oakville, and so I make some comment about a friend of mine who's complaining about Hunger Games and Battle Royale. And he's like, you know, and he's got this really strong opinion, you know, complete comic nerd, right? This guy. But it was just interesting to me that, you know, some people are taking this pretty seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a bit of cultural appropriation always at play.
Yes.
And that's just going to happen. I mean,
sure.
You know, I mean, like North American culture is in a pretty privileged spot where we can, you know, grab everything and, you know, see it all from all over the world. And I'm sure that they do this over in Asia as well. In fact, they do, actually. I could probably point some fingers. But when it comes to Battle Royale and like the Hunger Games specifically, I think that the focus is different. My friend Derek Halliday, who goes and sees every film, he's amazing, and he's so brilliant at his critiques. He mentioned that like the Hunger Games focused a lot on the glamour and the build-up,
right.
And then, you know, the survivalist aspect was, you know, not as important. Whereas Battle Royale was primarily all about the survivalist aspect.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And so the setup was very short.
Right.
You know,
right.
It was horrifying, and I think that led to the horror. But it was a very similar story told from two very different perspectives, and it's that the retelling of that story that makes the Hunger Games and Battle Royale very fascinating watching. Are you
a manga artist? Like,
that's a weird sort of question because like I don't know. I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with it. I was
what I'm fascinated by is I had no idea about the history of manga art and culture and so on. It goes back years and years,
centuries.
Yeah, centuries. And I just wondered, you know, and I think that's also, you know, circling back to the question about, you know, what pulled you in.
Yeah.
You know, Marvel over DC, and then this maturing, and you know, Tank Girl, and so on. And I'm just wondering how manga influenced your. Because I think, I mean, I'm no comic book specialist, but when I look at your artwork, it definitely is distinctive to me. Like it speaks to me on different levels, right? I'm
basically, I don't know how to put this nicely. I'm like a bottom feeder for culture.
What does that mean? I was picking like the tilapia of...
I just pick up the trashiest stuff. And it's the worst. I don't know. But I mean, I would immerse myself into cartoons from all over. And when I was a kid, I would watch so many like giant robot cartoons, and they all came from Japan. And as you grow up and you sort of remember and rediscover all these things and trace them back to their roots, you find that they all have this common ancestry in being animated in Japan during the 70s and 80s. And I think that's what led into anime and manga for me. And then from there, I think there was a renaissance of manga in, I think, like late 90s, early 2000s. And I was heavily influenced by it. I got to
say, there was a time before Elizabeth and I had kids where I saw manga everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. In manga's influence. I mean, I was blown away. Yeah. I read recently, like, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Absolutely. I think that people, like librarians, love manga. I mean, it gets young adults and teens and into the libraries. I mean, that's really important. Kids love manga because it's very different sort of storytelling. Girls love manga because superheroes seem to be very, very slated towards boys, and even then, it's not even. So. Yeah, like lately, Marvel and DC have been not publishing towards boys, but publishing towards men. So, like, I guess like 30 and up, you know, and it's just become a very different marketplace. So, the only way really to get younger readers interested in comics now has been through anime and manga, which is it's kind of sad. I mean, it points at like disturbing trends within the readership, I think, of comics.
So tell me, what do you mean by that? Like where my mind went sort of immediately was you said appealing to young boys, and sorry for the sexist approach, but the few times I've flipped through manga, I've seemed to have come across some fairly sexually explicit stuff, or I've the women look, they've all got wonderful breasts, you know what I mean? This kind of stuff. Now, having said that, when I go back and look at the old Marvel stuff, I mean, I think that kind of stereotypically, misogynistically, potentially,
I think that's fair
stuff. Whoa, that was quite a phrase, but I think it was. I think it's there for sure.
I think it's definitely there. It's interesting because like manga sort of draws like very, very distinct lines. So you have shonen, which is for boys, and then you have shoujo, which is for girls, and then along those lines you have the artists and the creators catering distinctly to their demographics, so they know who they're playing to. They're very clever about it. But yeah, I mean, like in some manga, like in shonen manga, you'll have like these women with like extraordinary breasts, and you'll have like these heroes that are fairly like a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
Right. Yeah.
So sort of like John Wayne if he was in Larry Flint's Paradise.
But like the Brady Bunch meets Frank Miller. Yeah,
oh, that's ridiculous. But then you also have like these girls comics that are very girly, and that they're for girls. They're they're written that way, and they're
when you say very girly, you mean pretty stereotypical.
And in some ways they're very feminine. I guess that's the best way to put it. I sound like a jerk when I say they're for girls.
No, I don't think so. I think I know what you mean. I mean, I'm with my Spencer and Victoria. I've really been intentional. Elizabeth and I have been intentional about saying blue is not necessarily for boys, and pink is not necessarily for girls. And
absolutely.
Even in the last week, Victoria, 5 years old, Dad, one of my friends says it's silly to think that pink is for pink could be worn by a boy, and we had just been at some event where a guy, adult, was wearing a pink dress shirt, with a blue tie or something, and she made a comment about that. Well, I think that's brilliant that she's making those observations, but isn't it wild that at such a young age these stereotypes are already taking hold and taking shape?
Like, it's kind of sad. I think like it was the toy industry. They were making like Lego for girls.
Right. Yes. Friends Lego, I believe it's called.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And obviously it's a way to sell more toys, but no one really sees that. They just sort of see these distinctions between men and women, and it's more lines to cross. It's more obstacles to overcome. There are more inhibitions to try and break through. When really it's just about selling toys.
Yes.
And that's kind of the problem, I think. We're not really evolving the discussion. We're sort of like trying to drive more wedges in between, and I guess that's really the nature of it all.
Hey, why do you think I remember growing up with comics, and it was the artists that were the big deal, not the writers. Like, nobody knew who the writers were. You waited for the next comic book because of the cover art.
Yeah.
Or there was going to be a big release at the Dragon Lady, or it was now immediately worth $10 the moment you bought it off the shelf. These kinds of things. Is there something behind that? Or was that kind of contrived? Or
No. I think it's fair. Comics are a visual medium, so without the art, it's not there. It's just it's a play. But as I've been writing my own work, I have been finding that I have been more and more of a jerk to basically all the writers I've ever worked with. I didn't really realize how exhausting the work is, to be able to take your crazy abstract ideas and like, this is what's going to happen in the story and da-da-da-da-da, and then try and distill it into like a plot and a script, and then hand that off to an artist who then says, I don't feel like drawing it. It's really frustrating. And it's really taxing, especially I think the most frustrating part of it is that at the end, a comic book script is not that long. I ended up with a script that was about, I think it was like 5,000, maybe 7,500 words.
You did a 4.5-hour movie in 2 pages.
Yeah.
Hamlet, for heaven's sake. So.
It's incredibly brief.
That's right. Very brief.
Yeah.
Terse.
Yep. Tight, concise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the comic script I ended up with was like 5,000 to 7,500 words. And I had like a first-year law student come to me and say that she had to like make her first-year paper like 10,000 words minimum. And I'm sort of thinking like, oh my God, I am trying to create content for very well-read people. And I suddenly realized these pictures better be really damn good.
Right.
Because they have to convey so much with the nuance, And so I realized that the writers now have they have an uphill struggle from the day that they decide to become a comic book writer. And then the artists have a lot on their plate because they have to give up so much time for the stories. So both of them put in an unbelievable amount of work for basically zero return.
So it's an interesting place for you then, as primarily as an artist, as kind of a reader of comics and historian almost. Having been
out of
comics
necessity
have played such a huge part in your life.
Yeah.
Becoming the artist, the painter, the visual, storyteller, to now actually writing. Where do your ideas come from? The writer hands you a script. You do drawings to that. I'm always interested in the creative process for my own sake, but also for I don't know, for posterity's sake, I suppose. But it's so different for everyone.
Yeah, I do what everyone does. I think when they're interested in writing, and I keep notes on me all the time. Like, obviously, nowadays it's about what cell phone I buy. So the cell phone I buy has to be able to take notes. And,
right.
Yeah.
Are you a voice note guy?
I tried being a voice note guy for a while. It sort of worked for a bit. I was having fun with it, and then I found that I was becoming more and more scatterbrained because I couldn't consolidate all the information. Lately, I've been finding that my notebooks have been really helping out a lot.
So hang on. So you went from print to digital back to sort of digital and print now? Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's hard.
I think it's wise. I mean, you also have this backup.
Yeah.
I find that for me, it burns things into my memory.
A lot better,
let's say
right?
You send yourself an email about an idea for a to-do list at home in your inbox, but then you scribble down an idea with a little photo or something in the phone number.
It lasts forever.
Yeah, it really does. It sounds kind of corny, but I think there's some truth in it.
It's so easy for me now. Like, after writing down the majority of my story in like longhand, it's easy for me now to actually go back into where I had left off with that story in my head. Like, I know exactly where I am, and I have a little outline to help me along if I ever need, jogging. But for the most part, I pretty much know where things are going. And so I'm confident about my process. Before,
which is great.
Yeah, it's a long struggle. I think like the past 5 years has been all about learning about the process of being a writer as opposed to actually doing any real writing. Like, I made some stories, but they're all crap. So I don't know. I was really worried after Shakespeare that would be the high point.
Is your hope that you're going to write a story that's going to become a full-length feature film? Is that
I can't even think that far anymore.
You can't even think that far ahead. I mean, in the interview about foreign love as a foreign language, you mentioned something about when you first were presented with the idea, it kind of scared you.
Oh yeah. It's love as a foreign language scared me because like.
Is that what you mean by not being able to think that far ahead? Same sort of connection there?
No, I got lucky with Billy Smoke, and I got lucky through Clay, and Clay is the writer on that story, and B. Claymore had an agent, and we got the story in front of Hollywood, and they gave us money for optioning the story, and so it's like I know that it can happen, and it's it's wonderful when it does because suddenly there's a money truck that comes up.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
But I don't think I can think that way anymore in terms of like making stories because it becomes so intrusive into the process. If realizing who my audience was half the battle in defining what the story was going to be like. And if I keep thinking that the story is going to be for Hollywood, the more the story takes on this Hollywood atmosphere.
Right.
And the more false it feels because it feels as though I'm making the story just in order to earn a paycheck.
Right.
Which is
you're writing for the executive producer at that point,
exactly.
Not your audience. Yeah,
and
that's a bit troubling when you think about it.
Yeah, it's kind of it debases the work. And I know this is comic books that we're talking about, but it's still troubling. It's funny because like that same sincerity that you can have with like this, you know, underground lowbrow culture where, you know, all the work is disposable. It really is sensitive to dishonesty. I think they can smell whether or not you're sincere about what it is that you're writing about.
You know, I want to pick up on that. You know, you've referred to your work or comic book work, artwork, and stories as being disposable a couple of times, and I think I might challenge that in the sense that if all truth is sort of storytelling, which I kind of believe it is, on some level, and I know the postmodernists would probably disagree with me on that, but I don't really care at this point in this conversation. But I look at my son and my daughter, and I think of the stories that have made sense to me over the years, the scriptural stories that I learned as a kid in church, the comic book stories that I read, the heroes. You know, and you look at films today, and you come out of a film like an Iron Man or a Thor, or you know, the comic book stuff that's happening, and even though it's pretty superficial and maybe not that substantive, you kind of go, you know what? I still think overall the underlying story that's being told I like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's about love, it's about friendship, it's about standing up for people, it's about saving lives, it's about changing the world to make it a better place. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Of course you can criticize it from a racist and a sexist perspective, and I think we need that. We need the feminists to critique it, and we need the postmodernists to critique it, and we need Chomsky to comment on it, and all those folks. But at the same time, I think there's something really valuable about those stories that I read as a kid. You know?
And I agree with that statement too. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like the stories that we're telling don't lose their value. I think they simply describe the time and place. Like I can't remember who said it, but it was someone that had said that like stories break down into being either one genre of film or westerns. And I now come around to the opinion that that's completely accurate. I was watching a lot of John Ford films.
Oh yeah.
I'd watched Rio Bravo. That was Howard.
Do you watch a lot of movies?
Oh yeah, lately I have.
You have.
In order to learn a lot more about storytelling, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It's my shortcut for reading books.
Right. I saw the film. Yeah.
I got it under my hat. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah. And I started realizing that, I mean, there are a ton of movies that are definitely just remade westerns. I mean, Lethal Weapon seems to be like Rio Bravo.
Oh, so many of these films are westerns. They really are.
It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so, I mean, when you sort of factor that in, then it's sort of like it's the setting that changes. It's the characters that change. It's the things that go into the characters that change a little bit. Their goals don't change. They're still bringing justice to this frontier town. But how they go about it, what it is that they're fighting against, all these things that they're fighting for, those are the elements of, of society that sort of come in. Like Lethal Weapon is about, I think they're in California and they're after drugs. In Rio Bravo, they're in the Old West and they're trying to do a lot of things in Rio Bravo. Mm-hmm. But they sort of speak to our times. They speak to when we live in.
Yeah, I think so. Favorite Western?
I really had a good time watching The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. That was great. And I just saw that recently. It kind of blew my mind because I was like, oh my God, I'm
a little more cliche. I'm Clint Eastwood. I'm a huge High Plains Drifter fan. Huge.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, and Outlaw Josie Wales.
Oh, actually.
Outlaw Josie Wales is almost, I think, maybe at the top of my list.
I think so.
From a directing, writing, everything, the characters.
Yeah.
There's some weak moments in it, but it's just,
For the most part. It's pretty powerful stuff.
I just, as you were talking about the Western and Lethal Weapon, I just, for some reason, went to a scene where Clint Eastwood says in High Plains Drifter, the story, right? He comes to paint the town red, and maybe this is the devil. We don't know who this guy is.
It's so good.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Oh,
it's awesome.
God.
But he looks at him and he says, I don't think I like this town, Sheriff. It's just so. Speaking of justice. So just a second ago, we're going to have to wrap it up in a minute here. But just a second ago, you talked about change in a variety of ways. Can comic books change the world?
I think comic books can communicate the change that we would like to be. Oh, that sounds so idealistic.
Now that sounds like you got a little bit of Gandhi in there, I think. Actually.
Oh my God, I know. Become the change that you want to be, right?
That's right.
But I think it's true. I mean, if comic books are ideas, and if we're speaking to our ideals,
sure,
then comic books can at least express and articulate those dreams that we have. And I think that's really important. I mean, novels do this, movies, everything in entertainment in our culture, they speak to the dreams that we have, or the ideals that we hold, or where we wish that we could be. And I don't think that's a terrible thing at all.
No, I think, I mean, I think that's wonderful. I really think it's a great way to end it. And yeah, sure, we're both going to be criticized for being idealistic morons. But you know what? I think you got to hold a balance between sort of a cynical, realistic edge and a hopeful idealism. And like you said earlier, art and it's got to be inspirational. It's got to be aspirational.
And also, I mean, I have to know the audience I'm playing to, and I guess that audience is me. So I'll just hold on to that nugget too. And I won't worry about the comments that come afterwards.
Thanks for joining us today, Eric. Eric Kim from Toronto, inkscratch.com. That's www. Do we even need to say that anymore? www.ink, scratch with a K, skratch.com. Check it out. You can see some of Eric's work there. Battle Academy? Is
that's
coming out soon?
No, it's a web strip that I made
a long
time ago.
Excellent. Okay.
What'll be coming out soon, hopefully, is Billy Smoke.
I'm sorry, that's the one I meant.
Oh, that's okay. And hopefully in 2014 I'll be able to reveal a new project, the thing that I've been working on.
Oh, very cool. So here in the comic book capital of Ontario, and signing off with Eric. Thanks again, Eric. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.